Okay, this program is called Welcome Back the Bluebirds, and it was developed by North American Bluebird Society. And I've added to it some, edited it a little bit myself. Let's see. David Thoreau once said, "The bluebird wears the sky upon his back." And as soon as you have the chance to see a bluebird out in the bright sunshine or flying across the road out in the country, you will understand that. There's 3 species of bluebirds in North America. There's the eastern bluebird, which is the one we have in the eastern and Midwest states. The mountain bluebird is in the Rocky Mountains and plains, and then can range as far north as Alaska. And then the western bluebird is from the Pacific Ocean to the Rocky Mountains. Some people mistakenly think this is a bluebird, and they'll tell me, "I don't like those bluebirds. They're noisy and they're aggressive and that kind of thing." And but this is what is called a blue jay. And probably a lot of you know that already. They're very fun to have in the yard. They love peanuts and that kind of thing, but it's blue and it's a bird, but it's not a bluebird. And some people think this is a bluebird. Now this is called an indigo bunting. Beautiful, strikingly blue bird. It's smaller than a bluebird. It's actually part of the finch family. So sometimes you'll see it alongside the goldfinches at the finch feeder, or you'll see it out in the grass eating dandelion seeds. That's where I often see them. But this is the eastern bluebird. This is the male. They are members of the thrush family. So they're cousins to robins. So they all have that same reddish breast. He has a bright blue head and back and wings, and the rusty red breast and a white belly. Now this is the female. She's less brightly colored because to help her to prevent, to hide from predators and that kind of thing. She's more of a dullish blue gray, some bright blue on her wings. She still has a little bit of that reddish breast and the white belly. And here you see the pair together. There you can see the difference between them. They're so beautiful. They're not very big. They're smaller than, if you have never seen one, they're smaller than a robin. They're about the same size as a sparrow. This is the western bluebird. Now they're bigger than the eastern, and the blue, you can see the blue goes all the way down to his neck. And this is a mountain bluebird. He's blue all over. He just still has a white belly. There's a real pretty blue. They're so fun to see I've seen them out in Colorado, Wyoming. This is the female mountain bluebird. But bluebirds are what we call cavity nesting bird, which means they need a cavity of some kind. They don't nest out on a tree branch or in a shrub. They need a cavity. Out around the forest edge, or maybe even in your yard, woodpeckers peck out holes looking for food. Woodpeckers and flickers will create these cavities, which provides a place for bluebirds to nest in the future. Also, the wooden fence posts that used to be very, very prominent, the woodpeckers would peck on those, or the knot holes would open up, and that was a place where bluebirds nested quite a bit. But when course development and construction came along, removing a lot of forests, a lot of the fence, and then a lot of people have gone to the metal fence posts, so they lost a lot of that habitat that they had. And then also people started cutting down the dead trees and what we call snags, which really provided a lot of food and homes for birds, but people wanted to get rid of them or use them for firewood, or they were afraid they'd fall, which is, that can happen. But if you can leave a snag around, if it's not endangering anyone, it can be really good for wildlife. So what's left here? You have a nice cavity, and you have a bluebird in his natural cavity. And Now, bluebirds eat mostly insects, especially in the warmer months. And here you can see this bluebird's got quite a big one. Now that's a female. So you're gonna either maybe eat that bug herself or take it to her babies. But in the warmer months, that's what they mostly eat. Now they can get into trouble in the winter because in the winter they eat mostly wild berries like sumac, mulberries, all kinds of different things. And then if there's an ice storm, even just for a few days, that can be really dangerous for them. So in the winter, it's good if you can provide some, this is a sumac, if you can provide some berries or raisins, some suet or mealworms. And then it's also a good idea to plant some shrubs or trees that have berries. Like this is, I think, a holly or of some that kind of a thing. Then it gives them something to eat in the wintertime. Another thing is you can do is put out mealworms for them, especially in the winter when they don't have their natural enough natural food. So this is a local person sent me this picture of the mealworms, the bluebirds eating the mealworms. Now, also a problem that's happened for bluebirds is chemicals, of course, and pesticides aimed at weeds that destroys the bluebirds' food supply and can cause other kinds of harm to bluebirds and other birds. So, and in addition to the habitat loss, cavity nesting birds suffered from the introduction of 2 bird species from Europe in the mid and late 1800s. Now, people brought these over to North America on purpose because they thought we needed it for some reason. Now, this is what's called the house sparrow, or the correct name is the English sparrow, came from England. And then the European starling is another big problem. And after these birds were introduced, their populations just exploded across the whole continent. And they're very aggressive, very persistent cavity nesters. So they took away a lot of the natural habitat that the bluebirds needed and other cavity nesting birds. Now, this man's name is T.E. Musselman, and they call him the father of bluebird conservation. And he was the first to call for the establishment of what we call bluebird trails. And it was in Illinois in 1934. Now, bluebird trail, we call, is 5 or more boxes along a route that you can monitor, or your bluebird trail could be just your one box in your yard. But what we call a bluebird trail is usually more than one box. And this is a good picture of the kind of habitat that bluebirds need. Now there's so many different kinds of nest boxes out there and designs that people have come up with. But what's the most important thing is it should have a door that opens. Don't build a box that doesn't open, because you need to be able to open and monitor, take out the old nest, keep it clean. It should have some drainage. It should have ventilation, and you can see on the side of this box some holes. Ventilation is needed. One of the most important things to consider if you want to help bluebirds and put out a bluebird box is the habitat, because bluebirds need open lawns, low cut grass. Because they do feed primarily on ground dwelling insects, so they like that low grass. They'll sit on a perch, they'll hop down on the ground, catch a bug, fly back up. So they need that kind of open space, and they don't like being around right in your house in town where there's a lot of houses, but I'll get into that more later. But you do mount the box about 5 feet off the ground. And we do point the box, the opening of the box, away from the prevailing wind, which here is, we point it towards the east or the northeast. Here shows another good kind of habitat, a cemetery, a churchyard, a park. If there's some kind of a little small tree or shrub around, you can point the box towards. That's good because it gives them a place to fly to after they fledge, or for the parents to just perch on. Nest box placed close to barns or stables or feedlots will suffer with stiff competition from house sparrows, because if you have a barn, or if you've been around barn, you'll know the house sparrows are abundant in barns. So, and same with around the house usually. So they need to be out as much out in the open as possible. You can put nest boxes out in the late winter or early spring. They usually come around and start scouting around for a nesting spot like in March or so. I've heard some people say to get a box out by Valentine's Day, but anytime really, you can put a box even out in the summer like right now. Like I said before, places with low-cut grass, a few scattered trees, and perches such as a fence line. I mean, they like to sit up on a power line or any kind of little perch where they can watch for bugs. This shows people putting out a trail. Now, this is what the bluebirds sound like. They have a beautiful song.
Eastern bluebird. One of the most beautiful songs in the bird world is the sweet chortling song of the male eastern bluebird. Males will sing to their mates from a perch near their nest. He will also fly up to his mate to show off his bright blue color by rapidly fluttering his wings in front of her.
So the male will go around and court the female, sing, and he does a thing called wing waving, which is a way they communicate, which is a really cute thing to see. So once he's found his mate, the female is the one who will actually build the nest. And it's usually made out of grass, really nice, neat little cup like you see here, or it can use pine needles. She'll start laying her eggs, 1 egg a day, and they're beautiful light blue, like powder blue eggs. And normally we'll usually see 4 or 5 eggs. Now here's a video that shows a female bluebird actually building her nest. They bring in the grass, the pine needles. She'll scooch around, make that little cup. And that's kind of a neat thing. Now, about 5% of bluebirds will have eggs that are white, but usually they still hatch just the same. Incubation time takes 12 to 14 days. So the mother will sit on the eggs. She's got what's called a brood patch, which is a smooth little spot on her belly, which she sits on the eggs, keeps them warm. And then the eggs will all hatch within 24 hours of each other. That's because she doesn't start sitting on her eggs to incubate them until she's finished laying them all. So that way they'll all hatch at the same time. The mother will sometimes eat those eggshells or they'll carry them out. After they've hatched, she'll continue to brood the chicks for a while because they have no feathers. So she'll sit on them to keep them warm. This shows some newly hatched bluebirds being fed. They're pretty naked when they come out, no feathers, just a little fuzz. Both the parents will feed the young all throughout the day, dawn to dusk. Actually, when the mother is sitting on the eggs and she's incubating, actually the daddy bluebird will sometimes come and feed her while she's there too. Now this is a little video that just shows a bluebird feeding babies. Now this shows a little mealworm feeder holding mealworm, and this guy looks like he's been in the rain. Looks a little wet. They'll pick up a bunch of mealworms all at once. You can use live or dried mealworms. They'll fly the box. They'll have a nice juicy caterpillar, that kind of thing. They'll fly in, so you'll see this going on quite a bit, in and out the box all day long. They're bringing the food. So what I want you to notice is the way they hang on the front of the box. When you build a box, it does not need a perch, because a lot of times when people build these little decorative boxes that have perches, well, bluebirds do not need a perch, so don't put a perch on. This little picture I took of some baby bluebirds a few years back. And I took this one also. It's fun to see them grow and develop. One of the most important things people need to know is that you should monitor your bluebird box. Don't put a box out and think, okay, your job's done. You need to monitor, kind of keep track of what's going on, how many eggs are laid and all that kind of thing. And watch out for, predator problems or insects or that kind of thing. Once the babies have fledged the box, you can take out the old nest because they will not use the same nest twice. So that's another reason for monitoring. And we keep data, and I'll give you a link at the end. You can either keep it in an Excel sheet or just keep it in a notebook, but there's an online thing called Nestwatch, and I'm going to show you a link to that later. Bluebirds actually have what's called a fecal sac. So when the little birds do their poop, it comes out in this little white sack, and they carry it out. Keeps the box a little cleaner. It still gets messy in there, but not too bad. Now around that 12 to 15 days, they start getting restless, and you can see that white ring around the eye. That tells me they are about ready. They get pretty big. Here shows some really full sized, and you've got to be careful. And that's one good reason for monitoring, because if you know that the babies are at about that age, you need to be very cautious and maybe not even open the box, because they can. What happens is premature fledging. If you scare them out too soon, they will not go back in. So you want to be careful. You don't want to scare them out before they're ready. 16 to 20 days. There's some cute little guys. Now this is a little video a lady got of a bluebird fledging.
Today's April 12th, and I would say later this evening these bluebirds will be fledging.
Sometimes the parents will fly around outside, call to the babies. If you see a lot of activity there.
One just fledged.
So there's still more in there, you can see. They're cute. Now this is what they look like. They have a speckled breast, and they will stay around in the area, and the parents will continue to feed them even while they're building their next nest. The bluebirds usually do 2 nestings in a summer, and sometimes 3 depending on the weather, but almost always 2 nestings. So these babies will stay around. Sometimes the older babies will sometimes join in on feeding the next nest of babies. So here's a baby feeding. Now in the winter, sometimes bluebirds will all pile in. If they don't migrate quite like other birds migrate, but they will stay in the area if they find food and cover. But they will sometimes pile in together into a tree trunk or into a nesting box to stay warm together like this. And you can actually winterize your box. You can cover up the ventilation holes, or actually some people build boxes that are made just for that purpose. Now there's problems, there's predators, I'm going to go over a few of these things. Sometimes mice will get in the box. You have to be really careful about removing that, and you wear gloves and clean that out really good with some bleach, because if you let them remain in there, that actually damages the wood. I haven't had a mice problem except in areas that are pretty brushy, or like on the side of a cornfield, that kind of thing. Squirrels sometimes will get in the box. This is a little flying squirrel. Sometimes you'll find your box, the hole chewed up. They just get in there and they chew it and get in there. One thing you want to do not put a bluebird house on a tree, because that makes it way too easy for predators like raccoons and cats, snakes, that kind of thing, to get into the box. Raccoons can be a problem. We don't recommend putting a box on a wooden post. We used to do that quite a bit, but it does make it really easy for raccoons. And of course, cats, feral cats, or even your pet cats. I always say, please keep them indoors, because they kill so many birds, and they can be really bad for bluebirds. Now this shows what you can do to keep out raccoons or snakes or cats, and that is put it on a metal pole, and you can add a baffle. This is called a stovepipe baffle here. You can grease up the pipe like this and keeps things from climbing. Here's another kind of a baffle. It's called, it's just a piece of metal that's wrapped around. this, you can see the metal, I mean, the cage type thing on the front of this box is called a Noel guard. And that's just to help keep the raccoons from, or cats from putting their paw down and to get the baby bluebirds. So here's another box that's on a pole. That's a really good way to mount your box. Now, another thing can happen. Sometimes wasps will nest inside the roof of your bluebird house. And that's not fun if you get stung. I got stung once, but what you can do is you can take a bar of soap or some Vaseline and you grease up the inside of your box on the roof. That's where they like to, that keeps them from being able to build their little nest. There's other native cavity nesting birds here in Indiana. The tree swallows are the most common cavity nester in North America. And the boxes I monitor, we've just had lots of tree swallows this summer. They had that beautiful purpley blue color with a white belly. What you can do if you have tree swallows competing with your box, with the bluebirds for a box, you can pair boxes 5 to 25 feet apart. The bluebirds will nest in one, tree swallows in the other, and they won't fight each other. Now, if they were a little farther apart, then they might. You wouldn't get 2 bluebirds or tree swallows in both boxes because they would fight each other off. Tree swallow eggs are little white eggs, a little smaller than a bluebird egg. The nest kind of looks like a bluebird nest, but then they will put feathers in it. And you can see, here's a picture I took of a female tree swallow. She was sitting on their eggs and she did not want to move. So I just took a picture real quick and closed the door. Chickadees will sometimes use these boxes. They're very cute. They build a nest with moss, and then you can see there, they put some feathers and hair, fur. They'll find fur and they'll put fur in there, but then you can see their little speckled eggs. If you have a box out in a really brushy area, like you see in this picture, or in your yard where there's a lot of trees, that's when you're going to attract house wrens, chickadees, and titmouse. Now, house wrens are actually their native bird, but they can be very bad for bluebirds because they'll get in and peck the bluebird eggs and toss them out. So that's why it's good if you can put boxes up for the wrens up around the house, and that can help. And just be sure your boxes are out in the open and not too close to the trees and the shrubs. Then it helps the bluebirds. I call this the public enemy -- This is a house sparrow I told you about earlier. You can see they're part of a weaver family, and they have that beak that's very strong. They're very aggressive, territorial. They'll take over bluebird houses really quickly. They can kill bluebirds right in the box and build their nest on top of the dead bluebird. And it's a very sad thing to find. And I have found that has happened to me, and it's very sad. What you can do, first of all, be sure your habitat's good, away from the barns, away from the houses. Keep pulling out that nest. It's a big, messy nest like you see there. Just keep it pulled out. It can be a battle to do a lot to discourage them. There's different things that here up there on the top, those are called sparrow spookers, and I put those in my boxes. And that the bluebirds will accept it, but the sparrows do not like it. And then there's other things you can do, trapping and that kind of thing.
Excuse me, Christy.
Yeah.
I have a question. Could you explain a little bit more what the sparrow spookers are?
Okay, yeah. A sparrow spooker, what we use is it's like a Mylar tape. You can actually buy this in a lot of stores. It's called scare tape. Or you can use like an old Mylar balloon and cut it into strips, or even just any kind of shiny gift wraps tape. But what they do is they need to be hanging above the top of the box like you see there, and they should be just blowing around just above the roof. It really does work. I've had success when as soon as what you're supposed to do is wait till the bluebirds have laid their eggs, put the sparrow spooker on, and it really helps a lot. Otherwise, the sparrows can really be just take over. They'll get in and kill your bluebirds. So I really do recommend. Mm-hmm.
One more question on the sparrow spookers. Are the bluebirds afraid of those, or do they adjust to that?
They accept it. Sometimes they, you know, if they haven't seen it before, they'll like peck at it and fly around and look at it, but they do accept it. And sometimes they'll just sit on top of it. So yeah, they do accept it. So it's a handy thing to do. You can actually buy these. There's people that sell these online. The ones I make are just homemade out of clothesline wire that I bend into an L shape, and then I attach the tape so that it just blows. It's pretty simple. Okay. And then you can see there on the right, there's a trap that you can put in the box. It doesn't kill a bird, but it will trap them inside the box. Then you can get rid of them later. Okay, what I wanted to tell you about was nestwatch.org is a system. It's a nationwide monitoring system. You can get in, put in your bluebird boxes where they are, or other kind of birds too, not just bluebirds, but like if you have a nest that you're watching in your yard, and in my house I have barn swallows at the barn, so I've been keeping track of them. And North American Bluebird Society is going to be able to use that data also. So this is like a screenshot of, for me, that's my house. That's the aerial looking at my house from above. And you can see those little blue dots are where I have boxes. Shows some data at the bottom. So this year I have 10 nest sites. I've had 19 eggs, 8 young, 4 fledglings. So that's something you can look up. It's nestwatch.org. Then there's lots and lots of great bluebird information online. You can look up North American Bluebird Society, Indiana Bluebird Society, my group, Boone County Bluebird Society, and there's also a Hendricks County Bluebird Society. And all of us have Facebook pages you can look up, or you can go to those web pages. North American Bluebird Society has really good information sheets available. Now, if you have any more questions or things that I didn't explain very well, or if you're interested in getting involved, or you want to build a box, or you need a box, my email is boonebluebirds@gmail.com. This is a sweet video I found on YouTube of a pair of bluebirds. They're just very beautiful birds, very sweet, and it's a fun hobby. As I explained, there's challenges and there's some work to it, but it's fun, and once you have some bluebirds, and you just will get hooked right away. Yeah, I hear them. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, I'll hear my bluebirds out in the yard singing. That's just wonderful. They call the Bluebirds of Happiness. So, I don't know if you've seen this picture before, but this guy's called the Mad Bluebird. So this Mad Bluebird has little to be angry about if you get involved and you help. And that's the end of my program. So let me know if you have a question or anything else you can think of.
Christy, I have a question. Did you say the North American Bluebird Society had plans for bluebird houses and other information on bluebirds?
Yeah, just about all these pages. Yeah, the North American Bluebird Society definitely has information sheets, and it has box building plans available that you can just print out right from their page. There's other really good bluebird pages also that provide plans online. So yeah, you just, like I said before, be sure if you pick out a bluebird box plan that it has a door. Sometimes people build them without a door, and that's not good. So yeah, North American Bluebird Society is a great place. There's also another page called Sialis, SIALIS, I think you can just Google that. And that lady has tons of Bluebird information. I guess I could type it in the chat. Let me type it in. Alice.org is the webpage.